This Bayern Munich front three is, yeah, it's something different. It's really, really something different. I think what we're witnessing from this front three is different than I guess what we've seen from other front threes. During yesteryear. To be honest with you, you think about MSN, you think about Bale, Benzema, Cristiano Ronaldo, you think about Mane, Salah, Firmino, Ronaldo, Rooney, Tevez. There's been some, like, honestly, there's been some fantastic front threes: Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Doué, you know, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, Lewandowski, Robin, Ribery. There's been so many fantastic front threes, and I think we are now putting this front three, Olise, Harry Kane, and Luis Diaz. I feel that they are now entering into these kind of conversations. Now, obviously, granted, they haven't, of course, and I think it's once they win the Champions League, I think then we can have a probably even bigger conversation and where we can start ranking and rating them and etc. etc. I guess until that point in time, I think it's one of those where we can obviously all look at the ability of all of these players and maybe individually talk about them. But until you kind of win the biggest prizes, of course, people are not going to, necessarily look at you, would I say, in the same kind of way as we looked at all those names I just named. They've all won, I think all of them, yeah, they've all won a Champions League, with their team. So obviously, when you look at this front three, though, it's like, I mean, we watched the game against Bayern Munich versus obviously PSG 5-4. All of their front three, again, I think it's over 100 goal contributions that these guys have had. I can't remember. Again, the picture will obviously come up on the screen, but I'm sure it's between them. I mean, if it's between them, that's crazy in itself. If it's not, and it's just even just 100 goal contributions between the three of them anyway, kind of thing is mad. But when I say, in terms of to each other, that would be crazy. I'd love to know what that kind of looks like in terms of, the three players. But, we look at, let's start off with like Elise as an example. Obviously came over from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich, which is obviously an absolutely gigantic step when you think about it. You're talking about a player, yes, obviously come through at Reading, went to Crystal Palace, was a very good player in the Premier League, but he was always getting injured. That was one thing I used to always think about Elise at the beginning to middle, kind of was, he gets injured quite a bit. Is he, you're looking for some level of consistency. You can see the talent is there. You just don't know if he can remain consistent because of the injuries and, not being able to, produce his best form at all times. And of course, he's playing for Crystal Palace. Ultimately, there's a limit to how far that ability can obviously take you, right? So for someone who's obviously come from Crystal Palace, I think that's obviously the biggest step out of all of the three players, is that the fact that he's been able to show that he can even perform at this, a higher level than, let's say, a Luis Diaz as an example, it's quite testament, in my personal opinion, to someone like an Elise. Everyone knows he's one of my favorite players out there in football. I think he's an absolutely brilliant player. The goals, the assists, just the style of play from a player like him, is just amazing. And you can't speak highly enough, of someone like Elise. And he's going to be a fixture in that front side, in the French team, during the World Cup. Where he plays, I have no idea. Whether it's on the right, whether it's, I don't know, behind the strike, I have no idea. That front three or four, whatever you want to call it, for France, I think it's so interchangeable. I feel like that's fluid enough that all of them can all play in different positions. We know what Dembele's on. He can go left and right. We know Mbappe likes to play off that left-hand side. Elise can come into the middle. It's crazy. So it's gonna, Griezmann, heck, I forgot about him. You can still, I mean, there's so many players in that French team, and Elise is gonna be one of the main parts, I feel, of that team. And I think he warrants that. He absolutely warrants that, So big up to him. And I just think, this video again, it's just more about praising and asking the question, in terms of, is this the best front three in the world, and how good do you actually think these guys, actually are? When we're looking at Harry Kane, I think, what more can we say? He's been scoring goals since scoring goals was a thing. Done it at Tottenham for numerous amount of seasons. He's now doing it at Bayern Munich. No one questions him. I would say probably a front runner maybe for a Ballon d'Or. I think if whoever wins the Champions League, I think will have. It depends on, actually. To be fair, I think it's only if a PSG or Bayern player win a Champions League, I think one of their players would win the Ballon d'Or. If an Arsenal or Atletico, I don't think any of their players have been performing at the level in order to win a Ballon d'Or, which sounds crazy because if you win a Champions League, clearly you're performing at some type of level, which you have to commend. I just don't think they've put in the performances that a Luis Diaz, a Harry Kane, or a Elise obviously have, kind of put in. But yeah, I think with Kane, it's just he's Harry Kane at the end of the day. You know what I mean? He's such a killer in front of goal. But just like I said in my preview for the Bayern PSG game, one thing about Harry Kane, and I think he mentioned this I think he mentioned this before about working under Jose Mourinho when he was at, Spurs. He's changed, not changed, he's changed his game in a sense where he's been turned into almost this, would I say, like complete kind of forward where we saw the goal that Diaz scored. He drops in, and I keep saying he constantly drops into that position. It did annoy me for England, and that's only just because England don't possess the quality of a Luis Diaz or a Elise, to be fair. So I guess that was probably what was bugging me more. But, when he's here, at Bayern Munich, the fact that he's able to drop into these kind of positions, that part, I mean, his passing ability, I in terms of strikers, he's easily the best passer of a ball. But I feel like he's rivaling midfielders and other players, in terms of just his passing ability, his array of passes that he can do. It's ridiculous. And I just think, what a player. Honestly, just what a player Harry Kane is. And, again, testament to him for being able to just, again, you listen, all the players have taken like step ups in terms of the clubs that they've been at. Maybe not Liverpool to Bayern, that's probably the same level, but in terms of from Tottenham to Bayern Munich and Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich, that's a step up. You're playing for a bigger club. You're playing for a club that's got higher expectations than the club that you just left, and you're still able to perform. Now, we talk about leagues, and I'll talk more about that. But ultimately, he's done it in the Prem. He's doing it now in the Bundesliga. This is a real good, really, really good player. This is a player who clearly can play in, I guess, any league almost, kind of thing. But yeah, Harry Kane, absolutely an amazing, amazing player. When you're also then looking, at a Luis Diaz, I think he's the most interesting one because for Liverpool fans, we didn't see this. We didn't see a player that we thought could produce these kind of moments on a consistent basis. Now, obviously, I had a conversation with Enz, Dean, and Cal, big up to the guys, talking about Luis Diaz and, the way that a lot of people have spoken about Luis Diaz, this season. And some people are like, oh, we should never have sold him and this, that, and the third. Listen, for me, selling him was never the issue. Even now watching him, which by the way, I think he's been killing it for Bayern Munich. That's still not my issue. Selling him was never the issue for Liverpool. It was always about replacing him. That was the key issue. And then, of course, you've then played Gakpo, who I've always said, if I had to choose between a Gakpo and a Diaz, I'm going to choose Diaz, right? Because I think Diaz is obviously the better player. The fact that you didn't sign anybody and now your options are Gakpo and Rio, they're both downgrades. You even put their abilities together, they're still a downgrade, unfortunately, on a Luis Diaz. So what you needed to do was go out there and sign a player who is of just equal quality to a Luis Diaz, but and obviously higher. Whoever that is, I don't know. Whoever you guys wanted to sign, people like Semenyo, all of this kind of stuff, right? You just needed to go out and sign. I think for me, that's what frustrates people more is that you didn't sign anybody. So you left it at Gakpo, and Gakpo's worse than Diaz. And then you had Rio, who is an up and coming talent, and we don't really know, like all of these kind of, there's too many questions. There's too many questions. So you're like, well, you ain't replaced him, and you don't have anybody better than him, but then you've let him go. Weren't you better off just keeping him? Instead, you give Gakpo a new deal, and then you don't really want to play Rio when he's shown in certain performances that he can maybe start a few more games. And Gakpo's not really been put on. Gakpo's not performing at all for Liverpool. Like, where do you go? Where do you go from here? And I think that's what frustrates people the most when we talk about someone like Luis Diaz. It's not, like I said, it's not for me necessarily about the fact that, oh yeah, shouldn't have sold him. And no. Selling him there's no problem with that. Like, he wasn't pulling up the same level of trees. And also, one of the things that Enzo obviously mentioned in the conversation we had earlier today was the style of play, and that's something I really wanted to move on to. Is I think the style of play for all three players, it just suits. Obviously, you've got a manager who has a specific style of play, as we saw in that Bayern PSG game. That he's not changing it for anybody. There's not going to be any differences in who we're playing against. We're going to impose our style of play. The style of play at Bayern Munich allows for a player like a Luis Diaz to be able to perform at the level that he is obviously, performing at this kind of stage. And I think at Liverpool, we never played that way. Liverpool don't play in that kind of way. Unfortunately, since I would say Diaz came into the team in terms of an attack has been geared more towards Mohamed Salah. Now, understandable because of course Salah is, the main goal scorer, the main, the guy who's going to get all the assists. He is the guy. He is the man. He's the one. You don't go against Salah. Blah blah blah. We've seen that obviously how all of that has kind of panned out. But because we played in that kind of way, and of course you're talking about a player who plays just on one side of the pitch, not someone who plays through the middle and who can drop in and do that. I think then you've kind of negated quite a lot of what Diaz, because I've seen Diaz play well for Colombia, for example. And again, Colombia don't have a Salah, they don't have a Harry Kane or an Olise, in their team. They don't have that kind of quality. But what they do have is a front line that will allow for everybody to kind of eat and feed off of each other. Whereas at Liverpool, it wasn't really like that. It was always about, let's get the ball to Salah. Let Salah do this. Let Salah do that. Now, like I say, can't really complain when it leads you to a Premier League title. Of course you can't. But if you're talking about your own personal development, then that's when the problems obviously, also come into it. And I think when you've got a front three where your striker is willing to drop into areas of the pitch that most strikers don't want to do, and by the way, is comfortable in said areas, listen, it's just amazing. And when you've got a manager who seemingly, I don't know, but seemingly allows for your front three to be a lot more expressive, allows that freedom. Diaz still works against PSG in the group stage game. I saw him playing almost as like a left back, coming back and defending. So Diaz has still got that work rate that he had at Liverpool anyway. But when he's going forward and in those attacking areas, there's a lot more trust. And I think at Liverpool, there wasn't enough trust in the forward areas because you only trusted one player, because that one player was doing everything in an attacking kind of sense, that everyone else kind of got reduced to, you just do the defending side of things and people will make up for the lack of defending from that player on that right-hand side, obviously being Mohamed Salah. But going forward, he's going to be the guy, get the ball to him and he'll make something happen, and etc. etc. If I can eat, I can eat. If not, let's just try and make sure that this guy eats, because if he eats, then we win, and, yada, 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 team player. And I think that's when I kind of looked at, Luis Diaz, and I was like, yeah, I like having him leaving isn't really a problem for me. Like, I don't see that as being like a big thing. Now, obviously, hindsight is always a funny thing. Now, he's scoring goals, he's getting assists. I think he's almost matched his Liverpool record in terms of like GA and stuff like that. But just even his performances, I think have been. It's so weird because I feel like I've watched quite a bit of Bayern this season. Let's say maybe like less than 10 games I've watched of Bayern in the Bundesliga anyway. And I don't feel like his performances have changed. I feel like he's still doing the same kind of things that he was doing. He's just a lot more consistent with it. Do you know what I mean? And I think whether that was going to happen this season or not, like it was just a natural thing, I don't know. But, you have to give him the credit for being able to produce this level so consistently for Bayern Munich, this season. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things when I think about, someone like, a Luis Diaz. Olise, again, I just feel like he's just taken his game. And people always talk about, right? People always mention, yeah, but the Bundesliga is this, but the Bundesliga is that. But then you want to sign players from said I keep saying it. We keep cussing other leagues and we keep talking about these other leagues as if they're just rubbish, because we keep thinking that the Premier League is this, that, and the third, because we get excited in the Premier League that Sunderland can draw with Arsenal or they can, almost beat a Liverpool. And it's like, no, this happens in every league in world football. That's just a fact. I've seen Real Madrid drop points to teams who you wouldn't think that they would ever drop points to. Does that not mean also that they're quite competitive? Ultimately, the top level of England hasn't got the same level of quality as any of the other leagues, bar maybe Italy. I'd say it's better than Italy in terms of the top level quality, but it's quite even, really and truly, throughout the Italian kind of league in terms of quality of player. In England, the top level that we've got here isn't really that. In comparison to no, we don't have players of the quality of PSG or of a Barcelona or of a Real Madrid or of a Bayern Munich. We don't have that. Now, what we do have in England is maybe the quality of player is better than, say, the mid-table quality of a Spain. Well, I think so anyway. I can only assume at this point, but I think that's just the difference. But we're constantly cussing, or so never say we, because we is French and I don't do that. People are all constantly, yeah, but the Premier League is more competitive and it's this, that. And I'm like, okay, but then it shows that you don't really watch other leagues because they're quite competitive over there. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, you're going to have a somewhat monopoly in terms of teams, but I didn't hear anybody talking about monopoly when Man City won 4 Premier League titles in a row. I didn't hear anybody talking about monopoly when Man United were winning 3 titles in a row. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. But for some real weird reason, because we hear it from these other teams, I guess the difference is randomly you can get a Leicester City or a Blackburn winning the league, as opposed to in other leagues, you may not necessarily get that, kind of thing. Maybe that's the key difference here that I see. But we're just always getting at other leagues, but yet we want to take their players. We want players from France. We want players from Italy. We want players from the Dutch league. We want players from all of these leagues because they're like, no, he's a good player. So if he's a good player, why are you not respecting the league? Because that's where he's doing it in. We've got to start respecting. Now people are respecting a Diaz more and an Olise more. Harry Kane was always respected regardless, but those two in particular, people are respecting them at like some high level, but they're doing it in the Bundesliga though. So why would you rate it? That's my question: is why would you rate something that you didn't rate? You don't rate Bundesliga. You think it's a farmers league. They play for the best team. They've got the best squad. They've got the best manager. All of these kind of things. Why do you rate it? That doesn't make sense. So this is why I would say again, people stop talking with your ears and listening with your mouths and that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like ultimately, if you're good, you are just good. Liverpool signed Florian Wirtz from Bayern Leverkusen. Does that then mean he's not really like you signed him because you think he's good? Regardless of the league, you've only seen him do it in that one league. So the reality is, if you're signing him, it's because of what he's done in that league. He's been a top player in that league. Are we now going against those choices? Like it makes no sense, because next we're going to be like, yeah, well, nah, Dembele is not really that good. He shouldn't have won a Ballon d'Or, and Lamine Yamal's not even really that great because he only has to play against Real Madrid. And what do you mean, guys? Come on, man. What do you mean? Zubimendi at Arsenal. Do you get what I'm saying? He played for Real Sociedad. So that means Arsenal fans should be like, nah, man, we can't even respect that one. Marino, we can't even respect that one. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, why would we respect someone who's playing for Thing? If anything, we shouldn't be respecting the fact that you signed Declan Rice from West Ham, because they're fucking shit. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't make any sense when we're having these kind of conversations. And it always confuses me when people get at other leagues, but then you want Kvaratskhelia, you want Doué, you want a Mendes, you want a Hakimi, you want a Pacho, you want a Vitinha, you want a Fabian Ruiz, you want a Joao Neves, you want a Jamal Musiala, you want all of these players, but they play in leagues that you don't even respect. Doesn't make sense, man. Doesn't make sense. But listen, back to what I was saying before. I just think, yeah, I'm looking at the front three, and I don't think this season anyway that there's been a better one. If you're just talking about a front three, where they rank, I don't know. I think for me, you'd have to win a Champions League in order for me to. If they win it, I can then rank them properly. In terms of how good I actually think they actually are, because as I said, all the other ones, it led to something. It led to them winning major honors because they were so good, as well as other factors. But because they are so good, it led to all of those kind of things. And I think once they do that, that's when I can really take a real look at it. But like I said before, they're top players, man. Real top players, and I think they've been doing fantastically this season, man. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the three players, Luis Diaz, Michael Olise, and Harry Kane. Just how good are this front